Welcome everyone to today's All-America City Promising Practices webinar. We are going to be having a discussion with Nextdoor.com. My name is Rebecca Trout and I am the Program Director of the All-America City Awards here at the National Civic League. And as many of you know, we are a 125-year-old nonprofit and we aim to advance civic engagement in communities to create more thriving and equitable places for people to live. So while the All-America City Award celebrates and recognizes those communities, we really use these webinars to lift up those stories, to share best practices, and to provide you more tools in your civic engagement work, which is what we're doing here today by featuring our friends at Nextdoor. So before we dive in, I just want to give you a little bit of an update on this year's award process. As many of you know, our theme for the year is building equitable and resilient communities. We received a number of really excellent applications that our review committee is diligently scoring at the moment, and we're so excited to be able to announce our new set of finalists later in March and then to welcome you all to our virtual event later in June. But before we get to the 2021 All-America City Awards, we've got business to take care of today. And we're so thrilled to be able to invite our friends at Nextdoor to join us. We'll be hearing from Robbie Turner, who is the public agency lead at Nextdoor, as well as Janelle McGregor, who's the community partnerships manager with the City of Tampa, Florida. And before I dive in and hand over the reins to Robbie, I just wanted to give you a couple of housekeeping rules. We are having everyone muted just to cut down on background noise, but feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat, ask questions throughout. We will have a 10 to 15 minute Q&A period at the very end, and we will be utilizing the chat and the raise hand feature for that. The webinar is being recorded and you'll receive the slides and that recording in an email to the email address that you registered under either later today or early tomorrow. All right, and that is enough from me. And now I'm going to hand it over to Robbie, who is going to start her presentation and start sharing her screen. Robbie?
Okay, let me get my screen sharing done. So thank you, Rebecca, and I really appreciate NCL having us here. I looked at the list of people that are attending and I see lots of partners, some of them dating back to 2012 when we first started. And so I'm very excited to be here. Janelle and I are gonna basically talk about Nextdoor. So I'll start off talking about cultivating a kinder world on Nextdoor. And this is all about the neighbor side. And then creating a Nextdoor where everyone belongs. I know people have had questions about civility and moderation, and this will answer some of those questions. And then I'm going to talk about Nextdoor for public agencies, which is really for government agencies, cities, and counties. And if you're not a city or a county department, then we still have options for you. So we have other options besides public agencies. And at the end, I'm going to give you a link that you'll be able to go and look at and see what type of options are available for you. And then Janelle's going to talk about building community on Nextdoor with the City of Tampa. And then we'll talk briefly about how to get started if you want to start. And then we'll do the Q&A. So Nextdoor is really all about cultivating a kinder world where everyone has a neighborhood they can rely on. And when we talk about neighborhood, we think more holistically. So in the neighborhood is not only a neighbor, but it's the local businesses, it's the nonprofits, it's the government agencies that support those people. So when we think neighborhood, we think holistically that everyone needs to be in the neighborhood and everyone needs to have a voice. And it's where neighbors go in to plug into the neighborhoods that matter to you, where agencies do, where local businesses plug in. What you may not know is we're located in 11 countries now. We have 270,000 neighborhoods globally, and we're in 1 in 4 US households. So we have quite a broad reach. We built Nextdoor uniquely for neighbors. So we really have focused our entire time on just neighbors and neighborhoods. We're built on trust. And so that means when you talk to people, you're talking to people that are at real addresses. So these are your real residents. There's no bots, there's no public access. The content in a neighborhood is private. It's only seen in the direct and surrounding neighborhoods. We do have a new feature that allows people to share more broadly, so like to the whole city. So if they're buying or selling, or if they're selling something, they can actually post it to anyone and it goes at a broader level. But the neighbor themselves choose that so that they can share with more people. We built it to really be useful. So this is what we call kind of the utility of Nextdoor. People are recommending things, doing selling and buying things from their neighbors. They're creating events, park cleanup events or meetings where they have birthday parties and stuff like that. There's local deals from local businesses, and all of these things neighbors or local businesses can do in the individual neighborhood. We also built it very local. So it's all map based, and we have discrete neighborhood boundaries. And that ensures that what we're showing is really only relevant to their neighborhood or their group of neighborhoods around them. And I think, as we all know now, having lived through the pandemic a year, neighborhoods have never been more important than they are right now. So I want to share with you just a few member stories. The first one comes from Concord, California. Charisse Fontes is a local person in Concord. She has posted out a message once a month and asked people if they need a meal. And she will cook a meal, and she has done more than 450 local families meals for them out of her own pocket, money out of her own pocket. Her dream is really to create a nonprofit so she can expand in other areas. And so she is getting lots of support from other neighbors as well. And so this is the type of wonderful story that we put out on our blogs. And so this was from a blog that just happened last week, where we were going out and getting people to tell us stories of people in their neighborhood that are doing great things on Nextdoor. In Houston, Texas, Guy Lance went on Nextdoor and started asking people, instead of recycling your tree, let me come get it. And the neighbors all responded, yes, come get my tree. He used those trees to make 160 free canes for veterans. So he is now donating things to veterans where the whole neighborhood was involved because they donated their trees. We found that neighbors build community through weak ties, which then become strong in times of shock and stress. So through the pandemic, through the big winter storm that's happening. This example, some of you may know Joseph. He's one of my colleagues, but he is definitely very active in his community. He has this wonderful little daughter, and he wanted to go paddling with her on their river that's right outside their condo. And he didn't want to do that alone in case something happened. So he posted out on Nextdoor, and he got all these people in his neighborhood. Sure, we'll come paddling with you. They created a group. They now have 70 people that regularly paddle, and they go into the group and ask people to come paddling with them. They're going to go paddling on a certain day or a certain night. And it's really built that community. What they found was that it was hugely helpful to know people before they had the winter storms hit this year. Here's an example in Houston. Everybody kind of knows what's going on in Texas. And I don't know if anybody's in on Texas, but I moved to California from Texas, still have family and friends there. So I've been very interested in what's going on. Cody Bowman, who's an ex-Marine, he has a construction company. He posted out within 48 hours, he posted out that he could do repair services for free during the storm. And within 48 hours, he received over 450 calls and texts from his neighbors in need. And so he spent thousands of dollars on material, recruited former Marines outside the state to help him get materials into the state. And his girlfriend now does a daily repair route for him. And he makes rounds from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. each day. And he's really trying to focus on elderly people or people with children. And so he has gotten, from his post, he has gotten tremendous feedback, positive feedback from the neighborhood, and it's encouraged people to help other people. And we have in the platform itself is something called the Nextdoor Help Map. And this is something that allows neighbors who are willing and able to assist other neighbors to put a pinpoint on their house, and it asks them how you can help. So during the pandemic, we saw people offering to run errands for neighbors. I can go get your medicines from the drugstore. I can go pick up food for you. I can deliver anything you need to you. I can walk your dog. So those are examples. Now, with Cody, the example before, he's now able to say, I can help you with broken pipes. I can help you with whatever's happening during this storm. And then people that are in need can actually go to the map and see where's that little green dot near me? What can they do? I need somebody to go run to the drugstore for me because I'm almost out of my medicine. And they can go find that person, private message them, and get them to help them. This has been basically a godsend for members all over the country and actually all over the world in knowing you can rely on your neighbors by going to Nextdoor. And here's just a few examples of neighbors helping neighbors. The first one is actually one from a hurricane, the Hurricane Harvey that hit Houston like 3 years ago. And someone was desperate to get rescued. And so they, in Houston, we saw hundreds of these types of posts. I'm on my roof, come get me. And neighbors had boats. They had, different ways of getting to the people, and so they were able to help them. The middle one is more about storms, and he's talking about road closures. And he owns a wrecker service. He's willing to come get you. He's willing to talk to you if you need help. And then the third one was another hurricane example, and this was in Florida. And he's a former Army medic, and he has a 4x4 Jeep, and he's willing to go out and help people in the storm, go rescue them. If one of them's been injured, help them until, the official city or county emergency management can get to them. So those are just a few of the examples. Now, as an agency, you'll also find that members show their appreciation to their public agencies that are on Nextdoor. And in this case, this was around 9/11, and this woman really wanted to honor all the first responders on 9/11 in her city. So this is in Brentwood. And so she posted out a message saying, is there anybody willing to help me do a day of thanks for our first responders on September 11th? And so 25 to 30 people responded, and there were 30 people in the morning afternoon shift and 6 to 10 in the night shift. And so people from the entire neighborhoods that she posted it to helped her. And you can see the picture of what she actually delivered to the first responders, to the police department and the fire department. So you'll find that there's a lot of appreciation, especially for the types of information that Janelle's going to talk to you about. So that's kind of Nextdoor for the neighborhood. And now I know that some of you have heard negative stories about Nextdoor. People aren't moderating posts, and we've done a lot of work over the last year, more than last year. Actually, the last 4 or 5 years, we've actually been working on creating Nextdoor where everyone belongs and everyone has civil conversations. So I wanted to give you the update from 2020. Everyone, when they first join, has to sign up for community guidelines. And it really is trying to set the stage that should be a welcoming place for everyone. Everyone needs to be respectful to each other. There's no discrimination. So there's a whole list of community guidelines. And when they sign up, they have to sign up that they're going to abide by these. And so we strengthened those guidelines and made them more specific. And when you get the presentation, you can click on the community guidelines and go see it if you're interested. We also updated our policy on racism, discrimination, and hate speech. And again, you can go look at that policy. We announced it to our members. We also we have Nextdoor leads in every neighborhood. Those are people that are, think of them as the welcoming people, the moderating people for the neighborhood conversations. We realized we didn't have enough people as leads, and we really had not done a fantastic job training them on how to review posts. So we created a whole new category of reviewers. We call them community reviewers, and created an entire program with a training program around that. And so now we have significantly more people reviewing content that have been reported by every individual neighbors about the content. We also have seen, because since we've added those community reviewers, a significant reduction in exposure to harmful content. So we want to make sure that people don't see the bullying, they don't see racial speech. So we want to make sure that we keep reducing that. So we have other things we're doing later in 2021 and in 2022 that will help with this as well. One thing we did do was we created what we call a good neighbor pledge. And before everyone, this was kind of September, October timeframe, I think, everyone that got onto Nextdoor in a neighborhood had to sign or had to read the pledge. And this is in the little phone that says the good neighbor pledge: be helpful, be respectful, do not discriminate, no harmful activity. And they had to check the box that says, I agree to treat everyone in the neighbor community with respect. And they could either go directly to their neighborhood after they check that box, or they could read the community guidelines if they were like, oh, what is this community guidelines about? And then they could go to their neighborhood. And so we also did the same thing for our agency. So very similar to the Good Neighbor Pledge, we also, every agency user had to come in and sign what we called the Code of Conduct. But it was very similar to these, where it's be helpful, be respectful, do not discriminate. So it was very similar to the Good Neighbor Pledge. We also realized that, especially with the political upheaval of the country, very bifurcated, people are on one side or the other, or there's a project in a neighborhood, or a project in a city where some people want it, some people don't. We saw that there were a lot of people that were totally opposite spectrums of what was going on. And we want to make sure that those types of conversations, as more people join, we started moving them into what we call a group, and we call it a civil discourse group, where this is on the right-hand side, we give them group guidelines. So instead of saying you're an idiot for thinking that way, we're trying to get them to listen to each other, kind of lead with compassion, actually listen to the other people, and then cite the sources. A lot of people were having discussions around COVID, but they weren't, I heard this, I heard that. Well, that's not good. We have a misinformation policy. If you don't, you need to cite your resource or cite your sources. And so we've seen that this actually helps neighborhoods as well. They don't see as much bullying where one person wants everybody to believe what they believe. So this was one of the things that we've just more recently done. Internally with the company, we also want our employees to be thinking about ways to make Nextdoor more welcoming, more open, where everyone can enjoy. So we had a September 2020 conversation series where every week we had someone come in, talk about their experiences. And it was a great series that really opened up avenues for thinking about ways we could make Nextdoor better for everyone. We also all took an anti-harassment and anti-racism employee training. And so that was for us as employees, we're all on Nextdoor as well. And we're mostly leads in our neighborhoods to really understand how, what we're, like don't look at it from your point of view. Look at it from other points of view when you're looking at a message that's out there, and understand points of views, other points of view. So it was really a very good training. So that was 2020. We also, we hear about diversity. You know, do we have diverse people in our company, on our boards? So our CEO created a blog post, and it's called Update on Our Work to Create a Nextdoor Where Everyone Belongs. These are all blog posts that you can go to. It's blog.nextdoor.com, and it's on our last slide as well. That URL is. But you click on this one, it's going to take you there. So we have really expanded our diversity of perspectives and expertise on all our boards. So we don't only have a board of directors. For each focus area within the company, we have a board, an advisory board, which are people that are within, you know, that use our products, and peoples that are expert in that area. So, for example, Janelle is on our board, our agency board, our agency advisory board. And Janelle has been with us forever, it seems like, on Nextdoor. So she can tell you about that in a moment. Now, the other thing we've done, which I think is very helpful as well, is we, for community moderation, we were hearing that some of our moderators don't use the guidelines. They use their personal feelings to remove posts. So we have given guidance to our Nextdoor leads and community reviewers that clarifies reporting and removing content. We're now enforcing community guidelines in groups on Nextdoor. And we're our policy, we created a new policy and action on hate groups. So we ban all hate groups. So think QAnon. As an example. And then we've just now partnered in the last 2 weeks, I think, with a company called New Quo, and they are launching an online course specifically for our leads and our community reviewers. And what it does is it provides a tool for them on how to do inclusive moderation, and it gives them anti-bias training. So we believe all of these things will help us. And like I said, we have lots of different ideas for the rest of the year and going forward, but these are the things that we've done just in the last year to improve the civility on the website. So really quickly, I'm going to go talk about Nextdoor for public agencies. And again, this is like city and county agencies. And what it is for you, it's a platform that sits on top of all the neighborhoods within your service area. So if you're a city, it's the city boundary and all the individual neighbors within the city boundary. So you can reach out to the right audience. These are verified residents who live directly in your city or your county. You can geotarget your posts. So you can go to a neighborhood, a group of neighborhoods. You can give us a map of your district. So city council districts, commissioner districts, fire districts, whatever. We'll put those into the map and you can actually geotarget directly. We see a lot of police departments actually giving us those maps and having police officers that are the district levels, they can assign them so they can only post to the district level. So you have lots of different options on the geotargeting. And you're going to be able to use polls to actually find out real world results from your neighbors. So you can ask them a question and they can respond back to you by voting on up to 10 different options. And then you can download those results by neighborhood, by service area, or for the whole, look at them from the whole city. We're very different than other social media in that we are an opt-out platform. Every neighbor that joins will be automatically subscribed to your page. And they don't see the message on your page. They see it in their own individual neighborhood. Now they can opt out if they wish, but we don't really see a lot of people opting out. They may mute an individual conversation, but they don't typically just say, I never want to hear from this agency again. The neighbors do not initiate the communication. agency creates a post, and then the residents can thank and reply to that post, or they can send the agency user a private message where you can have a two-way conversation privately between you and them. Another big thing is you do not see the information about residents. So you see their first name, the initial of their last name, and where they're from. And you don't see what they're discussing in their neighborhoods. And we have a whole best practices on how you can go out and know what's going on in the neighborhoods and be able to post information out to them. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Janelle, and she's going to talk about the City of Tampa.
Thank you so much, Robbie. What a great presentation. All right, I am going to get queued up here. All right. So once again, my name is Janelle McGregor. I'm the Community Partnerships Manager for the City of Tampa. Prior to moving over to this new role, I served as one of the spokespeople for the Tampa Police Department. And that's where I had the great opportunity of meeting Robbie and her team. So just to give you a little bit of background knowledge on the city, we're the third largest city within Florida. Still waiting on those final census numbers, but right now it's looking like we're going to be over 400,000 in population. Most exciting news ever, we not only hosted the Super Bowl in our own backyard, but we also won the Super Bowl in our own backyard. So talk about a lot going on in the last couple of weeks that included a lot of conversation for our neighbors from the public agency perspective. So just going back a little bit, we joined Nextdoor. And when I say we, I'm mentioning the Tampa Police Department. I haven't quite cut the cord on that yet. So with the Tampa Police Department, they joined back in January of 2014. And I have to admit, it wasn't a quick process. There was a lot of conversations back and forth between our team and Robbie and her team, because with us utilizing social media, we wanted to make sure that it was a platform that our residents would find value in and that we would be able to manage as well. Fast forward 4 years later, or 3 years later, I should say, and the City of Tampa joined Nextdoor. And the relevance of the city joining Nextdoor is we were in the middle of Hurricane Irma, and we're sitting in the EOC, and I'm like frantically calling Robbie. You talk about helps when you know someone, right? I'm frantically calling Robbie, and I'm like, Robbie, we have got to communicate to our residents about this hurricane. And within, I would say, the snap of a finger, our whole city agency was then able to send out critical information to our residents who are being impacted by the storm. So right now we have approximately 169 neighborhoods within the City of Tampa. We have around 86 officially recognized neighborhood associations. And one interesting point of note is that approximately 96% of our recognized neighborhood associations are utilizing Nextdoor. So that lets us know, as far as the recognized association standpoint, that we have that gateway to communicate with our residents who we have those firm relationships with. Nextdoor is pretty much similar to, using your Facebook or using your Twitter. It's a very cut and dry, very easy to look at format. And when you log on, you kind of get to see everything right there within the push of a button. So there's not a lot of pomp and circumstance when you think about it, as far as where do you find this option and where do you find that option. It's all very easily laid out and right there for you to navigate. The most invaluable part of Nextdoor for us as community communicators is the ability to geo-target our posts. I would say by a quick show of hands, but that might complicate things a little bit. But how often do you go on to Facebook or Twitter and you see information that really doesn't even pertain to your locale, to your neighborhood, or even the region that you live in? So for us as community communicators, we want to make sure that we are sharing that localized message. We're getting our residents that information at the touch of their, right at the tip of their fingers that is important to them. Because right now there's so much information, there's so much spam out there, a lot gets lost. But with Nextdoor and the ability for us to geo-target our posts, we're ensuring that that message is getting to the people that we need to see it the most. And as Robbie kind of mentioned, there's different options of doing that, which I really think is cool. I think at some point they're gonna stop me from creating layers. They're gonna say, I think you have enough there. But we do have our city council layer on there. That's a new option. Because our council members want to be engaged as well. And there's information that they have coming out of their offices that are that's specific to their geographic boundaries that we want to communicate with. And then here in the city, we have 3 police districts. So when we're looking at crime information and making sure that the right residents are getting that information, we can split it up based on crime district, or based on police district, I should say. Are there times when we have to communicate with everyone? Absolutely. But we still want to make sure that we're taking advantage of those opportunities where we could be true neighbors in the process and give our neighbors close by the information that they're looking for. Decentralized messaging. That's very important for us on the city aspect, because you may have heard me use the term neighbor before. And we consider ourselves neighbors in every department, neighbors with our constituency. So rather than having one localized office or one centralized individual who's pushing all of the information out through Nextdoor, we have a neighbor in every department, so to speak. So a couple of minutes ago, we got notification that one of our main thoroughfares was going to be closed down. So I went on and I saw that our traffic neighbor had already gone and posted that to the audience that would need that information the most. And residents can kind of form a relationship with that person. So when they see Angela's name or they see Sonia's name, they know that's their water department neighbor. And they start to form those relationships with them. Same as with our Parks and Rec department. They have a face and a name that they can connect with. And it's not just an online relationship, but it's an offline connection as well. So Robbie likes to call it sometimes being Nextdoor famous. Our employees, when they're out in the community, someone will recognize them from the posts and the information that they're sharing. And again, that helps to foster that relationship from the public agency standpoint so that we can continue to encourage civic engagement and to foster and build those relationships with our constituents. News you can use, right? There's, again, when you're online and you're getting information, it's so much, it can be overwhelming at times. And one of the things that we are striving towards, and admittedly, we need to improve on this, but it's making sure that we're not just pushing information one way to our residents, but we are giving them news that they can use in hopes that it will at some point foster some level of collaboration that could lead to policy or decision making, so that the whole concept kind of comes full circle. And it's not just this kind of monologic conversation and we're just pushing here, take this information. But, you know, hey, converse with us, you know, tell us how you feel. And we're starting to work on what our tone is on Nextdoor. Admittedly, again, we do a lot of copy and pasting press releases, but being that neighbor, that's not kind of how you're going to converse with a resident. You want to have that personality behind it. You want to have that, hello neighbor feel to the communication. And that's one thing that we're working towards now. This is just kind of some samples of the information that we have sent out through Nextdoor that are very popular. These are like our top 3. And it's road closures, right? Because everybody wants to know how their commute is going to be impacted. So whenever there's a road closure, Nextdoor is always that first spot where we're going to not just let the residents who are going to be impacted by that closure know, but if it's a major thoroughfare, letting our whole community know that that's taking place. And grant opportunities. There's oftentimes opportunities for our neighborhoods to apply for grants, such as the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. And getting that information into the hands of the residents and into the hands of the neighborhood leaders is important for us, because this is a part of our civic engagement, giving those residents the tools and the resources they need to work collaboratively with government. And then also walking tours and various events that are taking place in the neighborhood. Nextdoor is one of those go-to platforms, again, where we can communicate directly with those residents and let them know, hey, this tour is getting ready to take place in your backyard. We not only want you to show up, but we want you to take the survey and continue to stay engaged with us in this process, because this process is obviously a path to somewhere else, and we want you to be on that journey with us. Now my first love, police communications, right? Where it all started for me. Using Nextdoor at the police department is critical again, because we want to make sure that crime information is not being lost. It's not being lost in the shuffle, and it's getting to those residents who need it the most again. And we've, through the years, been able to, after a series of trial and error, been able to kind of hone in to what residents want to see as far as information from the police department. So bear with me 1 second. I'll show you our latest adventure here. It is a video. Got everything here. Technology, huh?
Hello, my name is Eric DeFelice, and I'm the Major of District 1. I've been a part of the Tampa Police Department for 15 years and spent most of my career working in and around District 1. Now as the Major, I'm back, and it feels like home. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you in the community and hearing all of your concerns. I'll see you soon. Hello.
So Major Eric DeFelice just became a major. I was just promoted to major not too long ago. And what's so interesting is his promotion took place right when we were in the midst of COVID. And so where we would generally have a meet and greet, an in-person meet and greet, where the residents can come out and meet their new major and learn of new initiatives that are taking place within that district, we couldn't do so because of the pandemic. So our first go-to in that circumstance was Nextdoor, because again, the ability to geo-target that message, making sure that the residents within District 1 knew who their police major was, but then adding that component of interaction with the video. So not just leaving it to just be a flat post, but to kind of really bringing in our audience, or bringing in our residents and allowing them to hear the major's voice and to learn a little bit more about him was very helpful. And then again, kind of pointing back to the news you can use. We have a series of child safety events that are taking place. And it's not content that we would really want to put on Facebook or Twitter because we only have 12 car seats. So we want to be, strategic in how we're getting the word out, making sure that we're plugging this information into those neighborhoods that we know are typically challenged in that area, and making sure that this event truly goes a long mile in being impactful for the residents we serve. And don't know not one city or not one jurisdiction throughout the nation that is not having an issue with auto break-ins. So in just once again, kind of looking at where these auto break-ins are happening and who they're impacting, we want to make sure that we're putting that geo-targeted message right in that neighborhood to say, hey, 5 of your neighbors just had their cars broken into. Lock your doors, folks. So again, that message isn't getting lost in the shuffle of the more global conversation, but it's right there. This is what's happening right in your own backyard. Now, not to brag again, but I had to bring up the Super Bowl, right? Which was an awesome time here in our community. And it's actually the first time that we were able to utilize Nextdoor to communicate with our residents. Prior to, I want to say the last time we had the Super Bowl was in 2009. We were just kind of starting to get our feet wet on social. So it was extremely beneficial to be able to have access to Nextdoor, because once again, we had information that was important to some neighborhoods, may not necessarily have been that important to other neighborhoods. So being able to geo-target, being able to connect from a neighbor level with those residents to let them know the impact of the Super Bowl and what they can expect to see in the days or the weeks to come was extremely important for us. And that information ranged from what our public works crews were doing to park closures, because several of our parks were being used as venues. So being able to let folks know, hey, we got this great opportunity right here in our backyard, but here's how it's going to impact your day-to-day a little bit. And a topic that we're all very familiar with, COVID-19. Being able to share information that complements what our county colleagues are putting out on social media, as well as our state health department, was crucial as well, because there's so much misinformation that's being shared on the interwebs, as we call them, about COVID-19. We want to make sure that we're not only letting our residents know, hey, here's the facts of the matter, but also we're thinking about now highlighting some of the residents who have gotten the vaccine in hopes of trying to combat vaccine hesitancy from the standpoint of showing residents, here's another neighbor who got the vaccine. If you want to speak with them, you can. But then also giving residents an opportunity to take part in important town hall discussions and letting them know, here's where you can pick up facial coverings and water and other useful resources is a very big part of our communication strategy on COVID-19 communications.
Okay, so then that's kind of the end of our prepared remarks. But if you are interested in getting started on Nextdoor, you can go to nextdoor.com/agency. And if you are a city or a county person, there's like different options there for what you want. Are you a city county? Are you a special district? Are you other things? So this is for people that are a wide range of agencies. And if you're already a partner and you need some help, there's a help button on your screen, on your page. However, you can also go just to help.nextdoor.com. And then if you're interested in the blogs we do, our CEO does a blog every few months, kind of an update on what we're doing. But we also do a lot of really, really good member stories. And I'm sure that we're going to be having a blog pretty soon with the winter storm, since there was like 20 states that were totally impacted by this last round of winter storms. So if you want to follow our blog, you can subscribe to it at blog.nextdoor.com. And then
Great.
we are ready for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Robbie and Janelle, for that wonderful information. We do have a few questions that have come through the chat, so I will just tee these up and allow you all to decide who would be best to answer this. All right, so our first one is about sort of personal use of the platform. In my personal use of the platform, I see a lot of anger and classism towards the homeless. Are there any ideas about what we should be doing to be combating that phenomenon?
So I can tell you from the Nextdoor perspective, and then maybe Janelle can think about it from Tampa's perspective. But we have created a task force within the company to see how we can help the homeless, and how can we allow homeless to actually participate on Nextdoor. And we're really just in the starting phases, so I'm actually on that. City of Austin, the person that is on our board of advisory board for the agencies, Jill is actually moved out of the she's in the communications department, but her whole role now is focused on homeless people and how to better serve them and how to get them communicate with them. So we're working, she's actually been pulled into our internal workings of what can we do? Can we create a neighborhood that's at the city level, like maybe at the city hall, and she actually gets everybody on? Do they have cell phones that they can actually do that with? So we're kind of working through how could we allow them, by still allowing the neighbors themselves to feel secure on Nextdoor. How do we reach out to this vulnerable population and actually pull them into Nextdoor where they could get more resources, and then change the tone? How do we change the tone of the conversations about homeless, instead of it being angry at them, getting neighbors to figure out how they can pull together and help the homeless? So that's kind of where we're going with Nextdoor.
Yeah, wonderful to know that you all are thinking and working on that. It's a difficult topic.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and this one comes from David, and he has a question about open meeting or sunshine laws, and if I'll just try to abbreviate this a little bit. So some states have sunshine laws where people are only allowed to discuss subjects within their jurisdiction at public meetings. So if multiple members of a public body are on an agency group and discuss items, would that be seen as a violation of that law, or is that something that you all are familiar with or know anything?
Yes, I've had lots of discussions on this topic. So we have thought about it. And in fact, most of our, we actually have an elected officials, because this affects the elected officials. We actually have a separate elected official policy. And so like they can't campaign on Nextdoor, and they need to be aware of all of their laws that are pertinent to them and use Nextdoor in the appropriate way. So what we typically see from our elected officials is not a discussion around the actual issue itself. It's more around, we're going to have this town hall meeting, or the county commissioners are meeting on this date to actually discuss this topic. So each individual using it on the agency side can do that. Now, where I see issues is council members, mayors get on Nextdoor as an individual, and they're doing that, they're talking to their neighbors about issues, and then they take it back to a council meeting, and they would need to know whether or not that meets the law or not the law. So the nice thing about the Nextdoor for Public Agencies platform is if they're talking on that and someone does an open records request, all of the content is downloadable from the website, so that they can take and say, okay, post from this person and all the comments, here they are, and turn that in for the open records request.
Great. Moving along here. The next one is about the sort of accessibility of the app. Captions on videos, making it accessible with people with disabilities, screen readers, visuals, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so for videos, what we see kind of as a best practice is people will create them in something that does the captioning, and then they post the version that has the captioning on Nextdoor. So they are, you know, I'm seeing that more and more every day with our agencies where they're already doing a video, they're going to share it on Nextdoor. They have it on YouTube. So they're pulling, you know, they've got their YouTube, all the captioning on YouTube, they pull it directly off YouTube. If they use YouTube, Facebook, any of the platforms that host their Vimeo, any hosting service, it'll show inline in Nextdoor, so it'll be there. Screen readers, there's a variety of screen readers out there. They typically just take the text and make it larger, or yeah. So we do have protocols, or I'm trying to think what you call it, but we do work with those. We actually have added in some engineers that are kind of accessibility engineers. And so I'm sure as we go along this next year, we'll be seeing more and more accessible features.
Wonderful. And I know you're excited for this question. Are there guidelines for nonprofits, other organizations that don't fall under the public agency category?
Yeah, so at this point, nonprofits can join as a business, as a local business. And there's a whole section on that, and it's free. And there's ways for you to post messages out, to ask for volunteers and stuff like that. And so when you go on to, if you just went to Nextdoor.com and you can do a search for nonprofits, the best place to really go is help.nextdoor.com. That's the help center. And just type in nonprofit and it'll actually bring up, you know, how nonprofits can participate in the neighborhoods.
Great, and maybe we can share that link in our follow-up email as well.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, we're just going to keep this rapid fire because we have a lot of questions here. Someone mentioned that they one time had a posting that they thought was pretty positive removed. Is there a way to communicate with the reviewers to kind of get an explanation as to why it might have been blocked?
So in every neighborhood, there's a directory, and there's a tab in that directory that says, I think it still says leads, L-E-A-D-S. And that you can click on that and you can send a message to the leads. And so I get those all the time saying, why was my post removed? And half the time I never even saw the post because it got removed really quickly and I hadn't looked that day to see what was going on. But if they send it to all the leads and reviewers, then somebody will know what the violation was. And the person is supposed to get an email letting them know what it is that they what guideline they violated.
Okay, great. This next question is about the Good Neighbor Pledge. Is there anything you can do if residents refuse to sign?
Yeah, so they either don't have access. If they don't sign the pledge, they don't have access, and if they do get access, they can't respond. So it's one of those where, you know, until they don't get full access until they actually agree to the new member pledge.
Okay, great.
And then, yeah, and given, you know, so in our moderation, I mean, we do have people that abuse the system. We do have people that bully. And what we want to do is make sure that members report those people, because we have a moderation guideline that says, you know, hey, you violated this particular one and you continue to violate this, we will suspend them for a period of time based on the level of, you know, like, hey, they did it once and they never did it again, they aren't suspended. They do it once, they do it the next day, they do it the next day, boom, they're suspended for a while. And then they have to come back in and they have to agree to the community guidelines and the Good Neighbor Pledge in order to get access back to Nextdoor. Once they've done that, we try not to do this, but there are people we've kicked off of Nextdoor altogether because they just are not the right type of person that should be on communicating with their neighbors.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right, so this is a little bit longer of a question. And in any given community, there are particular populations that are more isolated from the larger community. Just one example, new refugees from Sudan or Somalia. Has Nextdoor developed any strategies for organizations in the community to reach out and include or identify people in the community that know it is important to get the refugee community connected to the larger community?
Yeah, I actually worked with a woman in Georgia. They more than 50% of their population is refugees. It's a small city, very small city. And she was spending a lot of time trying to have community meetings. And at every community meeting, she tried to get them to get onto Nextdoor. And, you know, some of them spoke English. Some of them did English a little bit. What we're doing now that we have 11 countries, we're starting to build up our different types of translations for, but we only have like major translations right now, like Spanish and English, and French and German and the countries that we're in. So if they speak, so some of the, I think it's the Somalis speak French, you know, so there are different languages that they could sign in for and see the conversations in in that type of language. And we're trying to expand the number of languages as we go over time. So it's not an easy one though. I know that they've been working on that for years. And it takes the city or the county to really focus on those populations. And it's not like just put them onto Nextdoor. They've got to be communicating with them. They've got to be having those public meetings with them. A lot of them do not trust police. They don't trust government organizations. So those populations, I mean, it's as big a problem as the homeless people. Yeah.
Great. And apologies, but I'm going to have to only take one more question. I'm reading through some of these, and I think a lot of these could be answered through the help portal that Robbie mentioned. And then you can always reach out to me afterwards if there was something not addressed. I'd be happy to get your question answered. But we're going to, in the spirit of civic engagement of the league, end with a question that is relevant to that work. Is there a way to use Nextdoor towards collaboration and ultimately empowerment, so citizens are actually part of the decision-making process with the city?
Absolutely, and that's what we're striving toward now. You know, as more government agencies are starting to use social to communicate, there's not that much evidence-based research on whether or not that communication is moving a needle in the direction where it results in a policy or a decision making, or even an item being placed on agenda setting. So with Nextdoor, we're hoping to continue that research and really push ourselves to making sure we're not only communicating, but it's communication that counts and that's collaborative and that is transforming in nature for our residents.
Wonderful. Great. Well, I think that's a pretty good spot to leave. We always could use more time for picking people's brains and questions and answers. But like I said, feel free to email me and I will get your question answered either through our wonderful presenters or through the website. As I mentioned, this is being recorded, so shortly you should be receiving the slides and a recording, as well as a survey to give us your feedback on your webinar feedback, as well as ideas for future webinars. We do these once a month, so stay tuned and subscribe to our newsletter to get notified of our next webinar, which will be sometime in March. And a little teaser is we're looking to likely feature the U.S. Census Bureau and talk about the 2020 census and ways that you can use that data. So keep an eye out for that. Really want to take a moment and just thank our presenters, Robbie and Janelle. I know specifically, Janelle, you've had a lot more on your plate from work lately, so thank you for taking your time and fitting us in your busy schedule. Robbie, your expertise on the app and getting people connected, we really appreciate you all. And thank you to our audience for being with us today as well. And with that, I will let you have a good rest of your afternoon. Thank you all so much.